Microphones should be muted. We are recording today's African Liberation Day event. So if you just give me a minute. So I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. So revolutionary greetings, sisters, brothers, comrades, and friends of Africa. Welcome to African Liberation Day commemoration event organized by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, England chapter. My name is Sister Maxine. I'm a cadre member of the A-APRP, and I live in England, and I would describe myself as an African born away from home. So before we go any further, I'd like to give thanks to Mother Earth for making it possible for us to live, survive, and grow as a people on Earth and all that it gives to humanity. I'd like to give thanks to our ancestors, especially the first ancestors who gave birth to civilization. They were the ones who discovered fire. They were the ones who started farming and hunting. They developed medicines. They made pots and they painted decoration. They were the ones that created music, dance, and worship. They revered the spirit and lived in harmony with nature. So I'd like to give thanks to the first peoples of Africa. I'd like to give thanks to the builders of our first kingdoms and our empires, the Empire of Egypt, Kush, Carthage, Aksum, Mali, Songhai, and Ghana in West Africa, Benin, Oyo, and Ife, the kingdoms of Congo, Luanda, and Motapa in southern Africa. We give thanks to our ancestors who built those kingdoms and civilizations. In the words of our eternal ancestor, Kwame Ture, we know that Africa was moving towards continental unity, but this evolutionary process was brutally interrupted by the transatlantic slave trade and by colonization. I'd like to give thanks to our great ancestors who fought valiantly against white European imperialist expansion and the horrific transatlantic slave trade, which provided land, forced labor, slaves, food, and resources to fuel the growth of capitalism and industrialization in the USA and other European countries. We give thanks to the great Shaka Zulu, Queen Nzinga, Nanny of the Maroons, and the million of African souls that were lost at sea. We give thanks to African women, the great queen mothers, the great queens, but also the mothers, sisters, and aunts and daughters who have nurtured the African family over centuries. We give thanks to African women on the front line, Queen Nyanda, Queen Nzinga, Nanny of the Maroons, the National Union of Eritrean Women, the women of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, and the women of Guinea-Bissau who joined the armed struggle and waged armed struggle against the vicious colonialists. We give thanks to those ancestors who sacrificed their lives in the political and military service of the people. The Honorable Messiah Marcus Garvey, Amy Jacks Garvey, William Du Bois, George Padmore, Malcolm X, Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Amilcar Cabral, Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Ture. Let us not forget Winnie Mandela, Tatina Silla, who died on the front line in Guinea-Bissau, Angela Davis, Robert Sobukwe, and recently passed into the ancestorhood, Dr. Maseko Peko. We give thanks to these ancestors who sacrificed their life for African unity. It is my pleasure to open today's African Liberation Day commemoration event on behalf of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. The All African People's Revolutionary Party is a permanent, independent, revolutionary, socialist, Pan-African political party based in Africa. Our objective is Pan-Africanism, the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. Pan-Africanism, the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. The A-APRP is therefore uncompromisingly anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-settler colonialist, anti-racist, anti-Zionist, anti-apartheid, anti-neocolonialist, and anti-patriarchy. The A-APRP has its origins in liberated Ghana under the leadership of Osagyefo, Kwame Nkrumah. And in 1968, having been overthrown in a vicious coup, Nkrumah wrote a book called The Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, where he called for the formation of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And he described the party as a political party linking all liberated territories and struggling parties under a common ideology, and thus smoothing the way for continental unity. So Nkrumah recognized as early as 1968 that we needed a continental, indeed a worldwide African party in order to achieve Pan-African unity. So the first organization of the All African People's Revolutionary Party took place under the guidance of the Honorable Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah and the Honorable Sekou Touré in Conakry, Guinea in 1968, when the first work studies started to meet. And following the untimely death of Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, Kwame Touré, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, took up the mantle to build the All African People's Revolutionary Party and dedicated the next 40 years of his life to building the A-APRP worldwide. So what is African Liberation Day and why is it important to us as Africans? Well, it was founded over 60 years ago in 1958 on the 15th of April, again in Accra, Ghana, under the leadership of Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah. And on that date, he called a meeting of the first conference of independent African states. At that time, I believe there were around 8 African states. And you will know that by 1963, the formation of the Organization of African Unity, there were about 30 independent states. So we place the origin of African Liberation Day firmly in the first conference of independent African states, and we look to continue that tradition. So African Liberation Day is a day to deepen our understanding of just struggles around the world and affirm our commitment to revolutionary Pan-Africanism and to socialism across the world. Throughout Africa and the African diaspora, this special day provides an opportunity to take stock of the challenges that confront Africa and Africans and to engage in political education and organizing work necessary to meet those challenges. So sisters and brothers, I look forward to a really interesting discussion amongst us. Every year we have an African Liberation Day theme. Our theme this year is Same Struggle, Smash Settler Colonialism in Occupied Palestine, Africa, the Americas, and Oceania. So why a focus on settler colonialism? Clearly, the heroic resistance of the Palestinian people has shone a light on settler colonialism. But it's important to recognize that settler colonialism doesn't begin with the Palestinian people. It is a tool that has been used by imperialism and by capitalism for centuries. Indeed, the first settler colony was in our own beloved Haiti when the city of San Domingo was colonized in 1496 and became a colony. We must also remember that the so-called free world of North America is in itself a settler colony, and it exists of the annihilation of the Native Americans and the blood, sweat, and tears of enslaved Africans. So the All-African People's Revolutionary Party is resolutely anti-settler colonialist, and therefore we are also anti-Zionist. So taking you into our program today, African Liberation Day 2024 is dedicated to the legacy of our revolutionary ancestor, Amilcar Cabral, leader of the anti-colonial struggle in Guinea-Bissau, West Africa. As we celebrate 100 years of upholding Cabral's revolutionary ideological contributions, we must also confront the challenges of today. So today we look forward to confronting today's challenges and not remaining in the past. So throughout today's presentations, we will be reminded of Cabral's important teachings on return to the source, theory and practice, unity and struggle. Our program today will start with a video where a member of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party will introduce us to the concept of settler colonialism and why it's important to people of African descent. We'll then move on to our panel, and we have three distinguished guests who will speak about Haiti, Sudan, and Senegal. There will be a chance for question and answers and your contributions after that panel. There will then be a dedication to revolutionary ancestor Amilcar Cabral, followed by a presentation on the theme, Same Struggle, Smash Settler Colonialism in Occupied Palestine, Africa, the Americas, and Oceania. This will be delivered by Comrade Paul Matsimela. There'll be an opportunity for a question and answer after that. We'll then move into closing remarks. So I'd like for you to take a short amount of time, maybe about 10 minutes, to listen to a dedicated sister member of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, who will introduce us to the concept of settler colonialism and its origins and the links between the Palestinian struggle and the African liberation struggle. Thank you.
I was not bored. I was riveted even without the slides. So deeply appreciate you, comrade, for sharing so much knowledge with us and really grounding us in exactly what settler colonialism is and exactly what Zionism is. So Isra gave me an intro at the top of the webinar, but you might have forgotten. So just to refresh your memory, my name is Onyasan Mushatoye. I am an organizer with the All-African People's Revolutionary Party and the All-African Women's Revolutionary Union. The A-APRP is one of the organizers of this event. We are a revolutionary Pan-African socialist political party. We have been an anti-Zionist movement, our organization, since our inception, and we are part of the worldwide anti-Zionist movement as well as the worldwide Pan-African movement. And what I'd like to talk about today, and I do have some slides. I love a slideshow, so I'm going to put them up on the screen. And what I'd like to talk about today is to reiterate what Nick just broke down to us so clearly, and to contextualize the Zionist project, the settler colonial project of Israel, the settler colonial project of the US empire within the larger global context of settler colonialism by doing some comparing and contrasting. And then I'm going to wrap it up by talking about the necessity of resistance to imperialism and settler colonialism and why we must politically, materially support it. So I want to start with a quote from a book that is quite controversial in settler states for reasons that are obvious when you read it. The book is called Settlers. It was written by a man named Jay Sakai, and the whole book is available for free online, and I'll drop the link in the chat. I'm like doing double presenter tech duty, so I can't drop the link now, but I will drop it before the end of the webinar. So he says, Capitalism needed giant armies of settlers, waves and waves of new European shock troops to help conquer and hold new territory, to develop it for the bourgeoisie, and to garrison it against the oppressed. And what the book Settlers is talking about is the specific settler colonial history of the United States. It makes a strong argument that settler colonialism in the US context was a cross-class project, meaning that the European ruling class and the European working class allied formed a temporary alliance to dispossess and commit genocide against indigenous peoples, to enslave African peoples, and to place the seeds that grew into the US empire. And so what he's saying in this quote is that settler colonialism is essentially a tactic of capitalism. Capitalism uses settler colonialism to acquire new territories, acquire new markets, engage in primitive accumulation, and settlers, whether they be working class, petty B, ruling class, etc., are engaged collectively in that project. So Zionism, point blank period, is settler colonialism. A lot of time and energy is invested by the ruling class, by the Zionist movement, by global imperialism to confuse folks about this basic fact. But like Nick laid out, Zionism, just like US nationalism, was white supremacist and imperialist from its inception. It is not an ancient religious struggle. It is not an indigenous liberation movement. It is not any kind of liberation movement. It has from its very inception been white supremacist, a tactic of Western imperialism, and aligned with Western imperialism globally. And Israel is very, very clear about this. This is part of the reason why the US provides undying support to Israel, and it's part of the reason why Israel conceptualizes itself as a bastion of so-called Western democracy in the Middle East. From the very beginning, Zionism was about stealing land, was about stealing resources, it was about extending the influence of Western imperialism to new territories at the expense of the indigenous population, the Palestinians. It has always been right-wing, even if sometimes people are like, I'm a liberal Zionist. I support Palestinian liberation. I'm not giving the land back, though. It's still the same thing. It's still white supremacist. It's still imperialist. It's still settler colonialism. And to understand this clearly, it's useful to compare and contrast the Israeli project of Zionism to other settler colonial projects that have happened across the world throughout history. So I want to start by talking about Zimbabwe. Much of the African continent, particularly Southern Africa, experienced the strategy of settler colonialism. European settlers coming to the shores of Africa, engaging in projects of genocide against Africans, and trying to set up basically European republics, European democracies on stolen African land. Zimbabwe was formerly known as Rhodesia when it was occupied by British imperialism. The African people in Zimbabwe endured several hundred years of colonization by the British until they rose up in a national liberation struggle that was victorious in 1979. The African people of Zimbabwe then went on to engage in a program known as the Land Reform Program, which is essentially them taking their land back. And in response, British imperialism, US imperialism, as well as the United Nations, which was dominated by imperialist countries, responded by sanctioning Zimbabwe. So if you've heard about any of this history at all, you probably knew about Rhodesia. You probably knew about British settler colonialism in Zimbabwe. And you probably heard about the land reform program and heard it was a failure, that it destroyed Zimbabwe's economy because somehow African people had forgotten how to take care of our own land. But that is not actually what happened. The land reform program was successful, and the land reform program has to be replicated across settler colonies all over this world. We have to take the land back. Indigenous peoples, whether they are Africans or Palestinians or indigenous nations in the Western Hemisphere, are the best stewards of their own land. So don't believe the hype. It wasn't land reform that destroyed Zimbabwe's economy. It was economic sanctions applied by the entities that stole their land in the first place as revenge for taking their land back. In terms of how that land was stolen in Zimbabwe, we see similar strategies across contexts. The people carrying out might differ. The technology of how the strategy is carried out might differ, but the strategies are pretty similar. They engage in acts of irregular warfare, meaning warfare that specifically targeted civilians and civilian infrastructure. I'm talking about women and children, elders, disabled people. I'm talking about going for the water supply. I'm talking about salting the earth so that Africans in Zimbabwe could not grow food. And if this reminds you of tactics that Israel is currently carrying out in occupied Palestine, like restricting access to food and water, like destroying the land that Palestinians need to sustain themselves, that is because it is the same process. It is settler colonialism carried out by different forces with shared strategies. Other examples of how the process of settler colonialism unfolded in Zimbabwe include what I refer to as legal trickery, meaning that the British would sign treaties with the Africans in Zimbabwe and say, okay, you get this little bit of land and we get this. And then they would go back on those treaties. And that is what settler colonizers be doing. They did it in the Western Hemisphere. They did it in Palestine. They do it all over the world. They use their own legal framework to buy themselves time, to pretend that they are interested in coexisting, and then they completely abandoned whatever agreement they make as soon as it is in their interest to do so, because the ultimate objective is always to completely dispossess the indigenous people, to destroy their culture, to steal their land, to commit genocide against them, and to forcibly assimilate the minority that remain. The other thing that we see in Zimbabwe when it was known as Rhodesia, actually, I hear someone off mute, and I'm just going to go ahead and fix that. Thank you. The other thing about Zimbabwe, when it was known as Rhodesia, when it was under British imperialist control, is we saw Rhodesia engaging in reactionary internationalism with other settler states. They had close relationships with the US government. They had close relationships with apartheid South Africa. They engaged in strategies of solidarity where they were like spying on each other's resistance movements, where they were engaging in weapons deals, where they were sharing tactics of repression. Throughout history, across settler colonial states, you see these states, whether it's Rhodesia, whether it's the US, whether it's Israel, sharing strategies across borders for how to best repress their indigenous populations, for how to best engage in land theft and resource extraction. And this is going to come up again. So, and the other thing about Rhodesia is that as anti-colonial movements were popping off across the African continent, the settler government in Rhodesia was extremely interested in engaging in strategies of counter-revolution. They were a force of reaction against African liberation movements carried out by Africans. And again, they did that in solidarity with the US, with apartheid South Africa, and with other reactionary settler states. And the picture on the slide is just, I feel like it's a really good illustration of what I'm talking about settler colonialism being a cross-class project, about the settler working class and the ruling class coming together with a temporary alliance to dispossess indigenous people. Like this is a mom and her child, and it would be like it would be like someone's like family photo, if not for the fact that she was holding a gun, because she was a settler in Rhodesia. Next example, and Nick already went into this deeply, so I'm just going to briefly touch on it. It's really important to understand that when we talk about Zionism being a settler colonial project that must be opposed, we have to understand that the US is also a settler colonial project that must be opposed. The only way that the US empire came into being was with the mass dispossession and attempted genocide against indigenous people, the enslavement of African people, and imperialism that began in US territory and expanded throughout the Western Hemisphere and the world. From its inception, the United States of America has been an imperialist and white supremacist project from the beginning. And so if we're saying that we must oppose Zionism, if we're saying that we must stand for Palestinian national liberation because we oppose settler colonialism, then we have to reckon with what it means to live in the belly of the beast, to live in the most powerful settler state on the planet that is propping up all of the other ones. You cannot oppose Zionism without also opposing US imperialism and the US settler state. Indigenous people are still here. The United States and the entire Western Hemisphere is still their land, period. And the tactics that the settler colonizers in the US and throughout the Western Hemisphere used to steal indigenous land, again, mirrors how it unfolded in Zimbabwe, how it unfolded in Palestine, how it unfolded in Algeria and in settler states, settler colonies all over the world. Again, those tactics of irregular warfare, specifically targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure. I'm talking about water supplies. I'm talking about food supplies. I'm talking about salting the earth so nothing can grow. I'm talking about signing treaties, and then completely ignoring them. I'm talking about engaging in practices of forced assimilation, like residential schools. These are shared tactics of settler colonialism globally, and the US was no exception. And then another example, which is little discussed because this population has been forcibly assimilated into US American identity, but one of the earliest targets of British imperialism was in fact Irish people. Irish land was stolen and is still currently stolen by Britain. It was one of the first nations ever to be colonized by the British Empire. And these are European people. These are people who are racialized as white, who are still subjected to this process of land theft, of resource theft, of racialization, of dehumanization. They saw the same strategies of regular warfare, of again targeting food supplies, water supplies. They saw long-term military occupation that is ongoing on their own land. They see their population being racialized and criminalized by their occupiers. And the example of Ireland, whose national liberation struggle is still ongoing and what should be part of the conversation about global resistance to settler colonialism, really shows you how imperialism can racialize and dehumanize anyone. The point is to steal the land. The point is to steal the resources. If they want your land, it doesn't actually matter what you look like. They will racialize you too and take it. So I want to bring it back to Israel. We talked about what settler colonialism looks like and the shared tactics across contexts, whether it's Zimbabwe, whether it's Turtle Island, whether it's Ireland. So let's bring it back to occupied Palestine and make it really, really clear what it is we're dealing with. So Theodor Herzl mentioned one of the fathers of the Zionist movement. He wrote this book, The Jewish State, which is actually not that long a read and which I highly recommend to understand the political foundations of Zionism and the imperialist foundations of Zionism. So this is Theodor Herzl in a letter to Cecil Rhodes. And Cecil Rhodes was one of the main architects of settler colonialism in South Africa. So this is what Theodor Herzl was saying to Cecil Rhodes. He says, "You are the only man who can help me now. It is a big, some say, too big thing. To me, it does not seem too big for Cecil Rhodes. You're being invited to help make history. That cannot frighten you, nor will you laugh at it. It is not in your accustomed line. It doesn't involve Africa, but a piece of Asia Minor, not Englishmen, but Jews. But had this been on your path, you would have done it by now. How, then, do I happen to turn to you, since this is an out-of-the-way matter for you? How indeed? Because it is something colonial." And the context of this excerpt, what is Theodor Herzl doing in this letter? He's basically writing to Cecil Rhodes and being like, I see what you've done in South Africa. I'd like to do it in Palestine. What are some of the strategies you use? What is the best way for us to do it here? This is Theodor Herzl clearly realizing the expansion of Zionism into Palestine.
Thank you, Sister Olivia, for the playing the video. As I said, that was an introduction to settler colonialism and showing the links between the oppression of African people, the colonization of Africa, the transatlantic slave trade, and the building of settler colonies across the world. And I think, as a sister, rightly said, America, which sees itself as a free world, is indeed a settler colony right next door to England, where I am. Ireland is one of the oldest settler colonies, and the people of Ireland are white, but were also mistreated on the basis of their Irish ethnicity. So settler colonialism is indeed an international arm of imperialism. All settler colonies and settler colonialists, all imperialists, they all work together to sustain the system of settler colonialism. So I'd like to move on to our first panel. We have two speakers with us, Comrade Shadia and Comrades Miriam. And we're going to take a bit of time to explore the situation in the Sudan and also the situation in Senegal and the work that Comrade Miriam is doing here in the UK also. We may be also joined by Comrade Pierre Lavoisier, who is representing the Haiti Action campaign. So I'd like to open the panel by asking each of the sisters just to take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, your involvement in the organization, and just tell us a bit about the organization, when it was founded, and the principles of your organization. Could I start with you, Comrade Shadia?
Thank you, my dear Maxine. It is a historical moment really today for me to meet you all. And I am very emotional because I realize how deep is the colonialism separate us from our origin as Sudanese. I'm Shadi Abdelmonem. I'm a member of the Sudanese Communist Party since 82, last century, so that I'm old. And I'm living now in Germany, in Berlin. I was political secretary of the branch the last 6 years. And we had our conference last week. I just resigned the position because really it is so long to have the same position 6 years. It was very heavy burden on me. And again, we have young comrades who need to experience, to take the responsibility and to lead the branch in Germany. And it is very important area for us because, like, you know, how is the EU, especially Germany, is affecting the politics in Sudan. So I'm very connected to my organization, the Communist Party in Sudan. And by the way, they are from the Central Committee, sending their greetings to you all. Yeah, I was in Europe like in the 80s. I studied in Charles University philosophy, and I was connected to my siblings from different liberation movement in our continent, so that I am not completely like foreigner of our roots and our struggle. Thank you.
Thank you, Shadia. Comrade Miriam, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, greetings to everyone, and
Greetings.
I'm really happy to be here today in this amazing call. And yeah, so my name is Miriam Kane. I'm originally from Senegal, lives in Italy and London, including Paris. I organize in Senegal with PASTEF, the African Patriot of Senegal for Work Ethic and Fraternity. We have recently won the election. For the first time in our history, we have a anti-imperialist and a socialist at best government. And in Britain, I am the co-founder of the Black Liberation Alliance, which represent Arab, Asian, African, Caribbean, and indigenous communities. I'm gonna kind of keep it short because I will develop more of our work in further throughout the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. So we've got really two experienced sisters there. Sister Shadia, you know, what a monumental contribution you've made over the years, as you say, from 1980, 82, you know, so it's a great example, you know, of the African woman's commitment to the African Revolution. And great to see Sister Miriam, a young woman, coming forward. And what a time to be on the scene, you know, when, as you say, we've got an anti-imperialist force now elected in Senegal. So Senegal needs all of our support. So I just wanted to ask you a general question each for the audience. You know, African Liberation Day is seen as a time to reflect on the progress that we've made in our struggle. And I think we have a shared struggle for the unification and liberation of Africa, for our self-determination as a people. In your view, Sister Shadia, what are some of the things that you see as the major progress we've made in let's say the last 3 years? It's hard to say in just a year in political life, you know. So what is, you know, some of the main, you know, events of progress and hallmarks of progress, Sister Shadia, and then I'll come back to you, Miriam.
Actually, today I had this very sad feeling that Africa didn't liberate it yet.
Okay.
Looking to the different countries, looking to what's happening now in Niger, in Senegal, in different African countries, and the stolen, completely politically stolen African countries like Algeria, Egypt. And for me, those countries are completely stolen by Arab, and they are just like cooking different games, political games against Africa.
Yeah.
Today, I felt very sad because, like, for example, 4 years ago in Sudan, by the December Revolution in Sudan in 2019, I felt that we can now make the change. We could be the greatest and first dictatorship in Sudan. We had in Sudan 4 very strong people's revolutions. And although they just like overthrew, or they just like violated these revolutions, but by the end of the day, the spirit of freedom and justice and peace for Sudan and for Africa is strong. So I think all the time we are like, it is long process from the 40s. When I listen to my comrade now, when speaking about different faces, same roots, it is the same fight. Really, I look to my presentation when I tell the story of Sudan to let the people understand what's happening in Sudan. I found out it is the same story. It is the same story in Liberia, in Zimbabwe, in Kenya, in Africa. It is the same. It is the same story. Colonialism, stealing resources, killing the people, massive genocide, and making this what's called democracy, this controlled democracy, they bring their access, and that is. So like, I think the progress, what we did, firstly, I noticed the amount, the numbers of African, progressive African women who are keeping fighting, understand the colonialism, and connect the liberation, their own liberation movement with the African liberation movement. And the other very sounding progress, to see all young women in that. Here in Germany, we have a very, very strong Pan-African leftist movement. Like young, I was among them. Like they are the eldest of them, only 13, only 30 years of old. So that I felt that we have now the hope. We are going in the right way to liberate. And the other thing, the revolutions which happening here and there, especially in Sudan. Now in Sudan, like before that, the trust to the Arab countries and trying to connect and solve the issues with even the revolutionary parties or the government now is less, because the Sudanese young people who are leading the revolution now, who are issue the revolutionary charter for the people's power, are more to Africa. So that it means that we are not shouting as Communist Party alone. We are now empowered by Sudanese people, Sudanese young people, to connect to our region, to connect to Africa. I think this is very important points. Although it seems now as very small lights, but my experience show that from this small things,
Seed.
small lights, we find the fire will be bigger and bigger for the liberation movement.
Thank
So
you.
today I felt the hope again after I met you all, my comrades.
Oh, that's good. Thank you very much, Shadi. As you said, the developments in the Sahel region, they hold out a lot of hope for us, but we also know, as you said, this is not a new struggle. So hope doesn't take a struggle forward. Organization takes a struggle forward, and we need to unify our progressive and revolutionary forces, and that's one of the tasks of African Liberation Day, to remind us of that. So, Comrade Miriam, just briefly, what are your thoughts on progress that has been made in the to return dignity, self-determination to African people worldwide?
Yeah, I'm going to speak about experiences organizing in Senegal and Britain that can link where we are right now. In Senegal, I have been part of the youth protest movement that opposed Macky Sall, which led to me being exiled under threat of arrest. Sall oversaw arrest of many of the opposition, Pastef, including Ousmane Sonko, the Prime Minister, and the actual President, Bassirou Diomaye Faye. In the past year in London, Black Liberation Alliance has organized with the Pan-Africanists. In London, we have been organizing demonstration for Senegal against the threat of invasion in Niger and outside the French embassy. Black Liberation Alliance is an organization of African, Arab, Asian, and Caribbean descent, people which organizes against imperialism, colonialism, and racism, allying in Black majority in a global South in Africa, Asia, including China, Latin America, the Caribbean, and West Asia, and especially Palestine. Now, this is just to give a bit context about where we are now. We have seen huge progress in the last year, in particular in the Sahel region, as you mentioned. Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Guinea have seen popular revolts sparked by mass movement of people to throw out the old guard government that was subordinate to French imperialism that has dominated for decades, if not centuries. It has energized the region in domino effect against imperialism. Most recently seen Senegal elect anti-imperialist leadership following years of political suppression. French imperialism only has the Ivory Coast left, really. African people in these countries are now in charge of their own resources for the improvement of their people, not the parasitic use of France. Here are some examples. In the gold in Senegal, the gold from Sabodola in Senegal was driven under armed guard to planes that will fly straight to France. Could you imagine any Western countries allowing Africans to do that to the commodities of their mines? In just over a month, in power, it's been just over a month since the Jamaica government is in power, has planned in reviewing all our mining contracts. We are yet to view all the effect, but the commitment in ending them is there, something that never was seen in previous governments. In Niger is a major supplier of uranium to the European Union. Uranium powers like and depleted uranium is used in nuclear weapons. This is one of the many resources used by the modern world, which is extracted unfairly from Africa. Now it is in the control of the people of Niger. And South Africa has provided much needed leadership with Palestine taking charges of genocide to the International Court of Justice. The moral standing of a country that faced apartheid now standing up for Palestine is historic and significant. Now, where the West is failing again and again to, to be the face of humanity as they are seen as the civilized people, now it's Africa that is leading those spaces when it comes down to Palestine and other spaces. So yeah, just to keep it short and sweet. So I think we have made huge progress from where we were a few years ago.
Thank you, comrades. And I know people who've joined us would like to contribute on that question of what progress has been made. I'd like to give you a bit of time to share with us what is happening in your own regions and your analysis of the forces that are at play, the forces of oppression, and how the people are resisting. And Comrade Miriam, you've touched on that a bit with Senegal. So I'll go back to Comrade Shadia, who's from the Sudanese Communist Party, to just talk us through what's happening in the Sudan. What are the internal and external forces? Who are they that are involved? Which are the forces that are destabilizing Sudan, and for what purpose? And how are the people being organized to secure our self-determination and, really a people's government that will organize the economy to serve the masses of the people? So, Comrade Shadia, you've got 10 minutes or so just to take us through, what's happening in Sudan and how you're organizing. Thank you.
Thank you. What happened in Sudan, like historically, like the series of military coup, revolution, dictatorship, revolution, 2 or 1 year of civil rule, and then the circle, evil circle continued. But the last 30 years in Sudan was very crazy because, like, I have to mention this from the beginning, from the time of the independence. The colonialist countries just try to separate Sudan from its origin, from its roots, because the Sudanese people are more to make the change and to make the revolutions. So they isolate them by Arabizing and Islamizing the Sudanese by force. So that they just like seed a seed of conflict in Sudan. It's Sudan as a country, and isolate Sudan from the Arab countries, from the African countries, and for the Sudanese to be part of the Arab League. This is from the beginning. So the Sudanese had very difficult, they faced difficulties even to connect with the African because there is a language barrier. The Sudanese force from the 40s to speak only Arabic. So only the educated people who can connect it to the Arab, to the African revolutionary factors. This is one point. The other point is even though it's happening, but the Communist Party is very conscious to that, so that the leaders of the Communist Party who are affecting the political sense in Sudan were connected to the liberation movement in Africa. For example, although they are connected to what's happening there, for example, the murder of Lumumba, the Sudanese dictatorship had hands on this because he was connected to the Communist Party, Sudanese Communist Party, who is oppressed all the time in Sudan and wanted from all the imperialist countries and all the Arab countries. So that the Sudanese Communist Party tried to find this connection with the African countries and African movement. And the last dictatorship was very cruel because they started by just killing the Sudanese communists like crazy. But this didn't stop the Communist Party from to be organized, from to be among the people, from believing that just to be among people and you can continue fighting. And that's what's happening. The situation in Sudan was like ups and downs, but all the time the Islamic dictatorship was very strong and oppressing the political parties, in particular the Sudanese Communist Party. The Sudanese Communist Party was building kind of coalitions with the other political parties in the minimum demands, like just to throw out the dictatorship, Islamic dictatorship, and just after that to see the next step. And this works. While that we are working among the people, we are trying to organize people. And we had the slogan of freedom, peace, and justice. It was the slogan of the Conference of the Communist Party in the 2016, the fifth conference. And it was be a question for you: how is the Sudanese Communist Party established in the 1946, and the fifth conference is only 2060? Because all the time the Communist Party is working underground, the leaders are subjected to kill, deaths, and firing them from Sudan. So just like to fight to make this conference, the gap between the fourth conference and the fifth is almost 40 years. Yeah, but we kept fight and we started like there is a margin after the very, very critical situation in Sudan at that time. The peace agreement, which was signed between South and North Sudan in 2005, after 55 years of fight and oppressing from the central government to the people from South Sudan, and the interference of the imperialism all the time to show that the war between South and North in Sudan, it is between Arab and Africans, which is not true because we are African. And between the Muslim and Christian, it is not true because like there is not only Muslim and Christian in Sudan, there is so very big numbers of the Sudanese, millions of the Sudanese who has local African religions. So like they make this statements to make themselves, to give themselves the excuse to interfere and to separate the countries. But the intention of separating the country started from the year 55th last century. After the peace agreement, which we know as a Communist Party is not going to bring peace for the Southern Sudanese or the Northern Sudanese, is not going to solve the problem of Sudan, is not going to solve the problem of development, is not going to solve the problem of liberation. We knew that from the beginning. But we think that at least to stop killing our brothers, at least to stop death in Sudan. So because of that, we accept this agreement. But we work during this time from the year 2005 until the 2000, we can say 10, to build the revolutionary committees in the neighborhood. And this is our strategy really to organize people. So when the revolution in 2019 started with the slogan freedom, peace, and justice, we felt at that time we did good job. But it is not the end, because we know the time the revolution will win, the imperialists and the Arab League and their axis in the region will interfere, and this what happens. So like the Sudanese people were very organized, and they know their enemy and understand how to confront this. Mainly from 2009, because they understood that the peace agreement which separates Sudan to two countries will not bring liberation for the both sides of Sudan. And they knew I mean the people, like the people in the street, knew that this is the imperialist game just to separate the country. From that time, the people are started to be more oriented to how to work for the revolution. 2008, in 2018, the Communist Party led the biggest demonstration to hand a statement against the general budget, and it called the budget of hunger at that time. And the other political parties don't want to join, but in the last moment they joined, because they felt that the streets are boiling. And if the Communist Party did so, and all the people like in his side, he will win. And then they get lost, so that they join and they start their game within that. But luckily, this war and the revolution to get high, and also the Communist Party started, like, because the dictatorship like oppressed the trade unions. So the Communist Party think about making alternatives. So started with the network of the journalists, the League of the Lawyers, the League of the Doctors, and the League, lately, the League of the Teachers. This is the seed from which the association of professionalists consists. Like, because we understand that like revolution needs trade unions, need the street, the masses, and needs the political, the, 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 the economical demands and the political support. And we work on these three aspects until the revolution was high and the people are sit in the 6th of April. But I think our fault, and I have to state it because it is very important lesson, our fault that we didn't end up these coalitions. Like the coalition of freedom and peace, it started from the Communist Party and the very close 2 or 3 very small parties. And then after the revolution is going to like appear that it is going to win, the coalition of Sudan Call, which is right-wing coalition and neoliberalist coalition, they joined at this moment. And they started to use the majority concept of the new liberal democracy just to dominate and to be the majority on the coalition. I think this is not like the Communist Party was not blind completely from this moment, but our fault. We continued in this coalition. And I think the violation of the revolution in Sudan started from this point. And also this very silly song, which was recorded all the time from the new liberalism, that Arab Spring. There is no spring. There is no revolutions. They just like use the young people to kill them and to force them for at least 10 or 20 next year not to try to move again. This is what happened. So that we are, as Sudanese, are not part of this Arab Spring. We have our own experience in revolution, in political war, in the economical demands, and we have, like from the beginning, the movement in Sudan is against the colonialist political project. And this was very clear for us. So the coalition in Sudan, it served for a while, but it like obstacles us from progressing. Again, it was the reason of violation of the revolution. And it is separate us from the liberation movement in Africa. And this lesson, really, we have to think it. When we talk about liberation and we talk about Africa, we should to connect to the liberation movement and to the parties, political parties, who understand how we can get this liberation. Because I call the African Union the dictatorship club. So we have to find our progressive club, and we have to work between the people, and we have to breathe the same oxygen which our people in Africa breathe. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Shadia. Thank you so much. A very complex situation in Sudan, but we can see that many forces are at play. And as we've outlined with settler colonialism and all forms of colonialism, the colonialist will use a number of means, especially confusion, to divert the people from liberating themselves. So as you say, the situation in Sudan is not primarily an issue between Arab and African or Muslim and Christian, it's primarily around the control of resources in Africa and the empowerment of the masses of people. How can the Sudanese not be African when you are part of the African landmass? So we have
our blood is African, land, not only the land. We are African. Our blood, our spirit is African.
Thank you so much, my sister. So I know our third panelist has joined us, and I'm trying to manage the time. as we go along. So can I ask Comrade Miriam to spend maybe about 10 minutes just talking about the situation in Senegal? I think, you know, participants will be really interested in that a bit more, about the forces of oppression in Senegal and the forces of liberation, and the hope that we have under this new leadership. Thank you, Comrade Miriam.
Thank you. I'm going to try to speed it up. So the new government in Senegal is imperialist, as I mentioned earlier, progressive and internationalist. It is like this because it has come from a protest movement in which the government ministers of today were the people in the protest movement facing state oppression for standing up against imperialism. We have a very young government. The president is the youngest president in the whole of Africa. A lot of people in the government are as young as 30 and 35 years old. Both Ousmane Sonko and Bassirou Diomaye Faye were tax collectors by profession who saw the corruption of the elite that serve imperialism. In most instances, political suppression of the kind we have seen in Senegal, with the army shooting protesters and the mass arrest of political prisoners, all too often end in defeat. But here, after many sacrifices of the young people who were willing to lay down their lives for a progressive change, we have victory. No doubt the revolt state overthrowing French imperialism and allying with Niger gave momentum to Senegal. What are the factors of oppression? In Senegal, the profiteering of capitalism and imperialism has been the primary motive, with brutal oppression against the people. It feels like with the global South, and using the examples in Africa, the more valuable the commodity of the world market, the more brutal the oppression against the people to deny them what is rightfully theirs. The juxtaposition is clear. We have Western expats coming to live lives of luxury in Senegal, reaping the profit of Senegalese workers, while hundreds of destitute Senegalese workers risk their life to escape the country by boat, trying to seek better life in the imperialist West, only to get treated like the second-class citizens there too. In Britain, we have a parasitic bourgeoisie that enacts austerity to ensure it ends up wealthy in economic crisis, allow 10 of thousands to die in the COVID pandemic, whilst also profiteering and uses racism to divert attention away from its own corruption and criminal use of taxes on warmongering. Our government here has a start wars, stop boats approach. The British Home Office recently prosecuted Senegalese asylum seeker Ibrahim Ba. He will spend a decade locked up in British prison, all because he was forced to take on the responsibility to piloteering a boat to Britain out of sheer desperation, and became the sole survivor when the boat capsized. Racism is fundamental to the keeping the population in line with the imperialist offensive in the world. So it whip up hostilities to refugee fleeing wars, rather than to have the population challenge the walls that create refugee in the first place. So the first uprising in Senegal started in 2021. For days, people were on the street protesting 24/7. They targeted government institutions, French businesses, French factories. Instead of supporting the people's right, the government sent out the military alongside the police and gendarmerie, which was a colonial, gendarmerie is the military police that we inherited from the French, to quell the protesters. The level of state violence was unprecedented in Senegal history. It led to many protesters getting injured with bullet wounds. My own 16-year-old cousin was hit by a bullet as well in his leg. The average age of protesters were very young, 15 years old, were out in the street, teenagers. It speaks to how desperate the situation was and how deeply it resonated with the young people of Senegal who couldn't stand the injustices any longer. This happened during the start of the COVID pandemic. You had the First Lady at the time doing private vaccination parties and inviting the elite to party in the palace while the people struggle with vaccine shortage and widening wealth inequalities, where the poorest in society was suffering mass unemployment, sickness, and had no means to putting food on the table. The context behind the uprising was the political persecution of our now Prime Minister, Ousmane Sonko, the leader of PASTEF. He's a young activist who came out and addressed all the key issues that Senegalese working people were facing. He called out imperialism, corruption, and injustices. Attempted by the French-backed Macky Sall government to slander him didn't work. The people got more energized. This terrifies the government, and they took desperate measure. All of a sudden, Sonko was charged with false allegation of rape. The people quickly saw through the slander. They knew the establishment was bullying any opposition to the government like Sonko, figures who represented the need of urgent change and gave the people cause to believe in. And that's what PASTEF represented and continue to represent. PASTEF was one of the only political party that was funded by the people and run by the people. So there is no businesses behind it. There is no bourgeoisie behind it. The people will have, if they have £1, they'll put into it. If they have 50p, they'll put into it. Many key members of PASTEF were arrested, including now President Diomaye Faye, as I mentioned. He was arrested for posting criticism of the government on social media. This invigorated the movement in the diaspora. People were really resilient. They became willing to resist by any means necessary. The young people put their life on the line. The students suffered the most, as they were always at the forefront of the movement. The biggest university in the country that not only served for people that house many African of the diaspora students, that housed many African students, was shut down. I'm reminded of this now with the Global Student Encampment for Palestine. I'm part of a solidarity movement written to stand with the revolt in Africa and also stand with the Palestinians. Are you getting any in Africa, as well as the support for surrounding states in the Sahel, we are seeing exchange of solidarity and a revolutionary dialogue between the people. Ivorian Pan-Africanists have been a pillar of strength and support for Senegalese Pan-Africanists, in spite of their own government disappointing position on the uprising in the Sahel. BLA holds forums which have attracted speakers from around the world to discuss a wealth of topics that analyzes our shared struggle and connect movement of resistance. We have shared our mutual goals to oppose the Cold War on China, to Black Lives Matter, to the rise of resistance in the global south, from Africa to Asia to the Middle East, Latin America, and the Caribbean. We have links with activists in South Africa, USA, Palestine, and more. Our lead organizers have been to Ghana, China, Kerala, North Korea, and of course, Senegal. Because of the political Black perspective, we believe this unity and solidarity make a massive difference in advancing all our struggles as Black people. I'm just going to end it there. It says that what happened in Senegal wouldn't happen if the people didn't stood and fought for what they believe was right, but also the solidarity we have seen, the role that the people of the Senegalese of the diaspora and allies have played in this, from France to US, here in the UK, weekly protests were happening at French embassies. As from the beginning, we have understand the role that Macron and French imperialism played in the situation in Senegal. And yeah, so I'm just going to make it short and sweet. So that's it.
Thank you, Comrade Miriam. And as I say, it's truly inspiring to see young people at the head of government, young people engaged in mass protest, and young people joining joining organization to help run the country. And as you know, ideology is really important to that, the views and values of those people, because we don't want Senegal to fall back into a situation, of corruption and control of the people. So it's really heartening to hear that the leadership is very clear on its anti-imperialist and collective line in terms of supporting the people. So as I said, we're pushed for time. So we're going to invite in our third panelists just to spend 10 minutes talking about the situation, introduce himself, and speak about the situation in Haiti. And then we'll look at the time again and see how to move forward, as we'd like to invite participants to contribute to this panel. So I'd like to invite Comrade Pierre to address the situation in Haiti, its links to settler colonialism, and the independence and unification of Africa. Thank you, Comrade.
Good morning. Thank you so much. And my greetings to all the fellow panelists, comrade panelists, and also to the audience. Thank you so much, comrades in the audience. Today is a day also in Haiti where Haitian mothers are being honored. So when we say Haiti, when we say Haitian mothers, we want to expand that to include in the vision of Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the leader who brought Haiti independence, because he said any Black person or any person of indigenous origin who touched Haitian soil would be considered Haitian. And so we are honoring all the mothers all over the African continent, all over the diaspora, people who have fought for the liberation of our people and continue to fight. Haiti is in, as you know, Haiti is in a very dire circumstance. I mentioned Dessalines earlier, 1804. Haiti overthrew settler-colonialism and declared itself an independent nation. The Africans had rebelled in massive rebellion and overthrew colonialism. And that's when Dessalines made this declaration, which was in the Haitian constitution at the time. But the settlers, the colonialists, they never gave up on Haiti. And so they wanted, Haiti was colonized by the French, then and the Spanish, and later on the British tried to get the foothold, but the Africans successfully overthrew them. But they never gave up on that. And throughout the existence, from 1804 until 1865, the US as a close neighbor whose system was based on slavery, actually put together an embargo against the Haitian nation. And that was followed, that embargo was respected by Britain and a number of France and a number of others. And during that period, in 1825, France imposed a debt on Haiti, a ransom. And the New York Times talked about it, where they forced the Haitian government at the time, which had been severely weakened because of a number of tactics and strategies that the imperialists, that the colonialists had used, those colonialist regimes, had weakened the Haitian state to a point where the government at the time felt they had no choice but cave in, because what they were threatened with was the elimination of Haiti as a nation and the re-enslavement of the Africans on the Haitian continent. So Haiti ended up having to pay France the equivalent in today's money of some estimated to be, President Aristide estimated the amount to be $21.7 billion. That was in 2003, when he demanded that the French return us that money. Because that money, instead of being invested in the new nation, that money was being taken to France. So every time you look at the Eiffel Tower in France, anytime you look at the Statue of Liberty in the US, which France gave to the US, think of that money that they stole from Haiti. Now, this is, President Aristide called it restitution because it was an exact amount. And we didn't finish paying that money to the French until the year 1948, and some people say 1952. But that was the reason for the coup d'etat that took place against President Aristide in 2004, the year of our bicentennial. And I'm going to go from there. From that period on, what we've had is Haiti has been under United States, United Nations occupation. They had conceived this coup d'etat way back in 2003 when Haiti had demanded that France restore that money. And President Aristide had made it clear that it's a two-part collection that Haiti is owed, money Haiti is owed. The first one is restitution. That money, we know in exact amount what they took from us, what they forced us to pay. And the second part is reparations for the crimes of enslavement and slavery. So since that time, what has been going on during that occupation by the United States, United Nations forces after they kidnapped President Aristide, it's been nothing but a reign of terror against the Haitian people. A reign of terror by the Haitian police, which the United States and the UN have been training. It's been a reign of terror that continues to quell the resistance that has never stopped. People to this day are resisting against the coup d'etat that took place 20 years ago. And because that coup d'etat, and it's not, as some people mention, oh, sentimental, no. People love President Aristide because he embodies the values of what the Haitian people cherish. The values of dignity, the values of living a life of having education, of having housing, of having good wages so that they can live their life fully in dignity. He embodies the aspirations of our foremothers and forefathers, and the movement from Valas that was created by the people and which he leads is a movement of the people for the betterment of Haiti. So this campaign, this reign of terror has been imposed on the people in order to quell the resistance and prevent people from achieving to complete their goal is to complete the promises of the Haitian Revolution. So where we are today is that after much struggle, the Famille Lavalas political organization had proposed that the puppet regime be removed way back in 2018, and in its place to have a government of transition. A transition so as to have a transition government that would last about 36 months, where people would be competent, honest people coming from the ranks of the majority population, would be put in charge of the various ministries, education, healthcare, everything else, the food sovereignty, agriculture, to deal with the issues confronting the people of Haiti. And so people had, so this idea people loved it, and they called it Salut Public for short, which means a government of public safety. Salut, it comes from the French Salut Public, but in Creole it's Salut Public, so people shortened that. And people mobilized around it, and this was really what the people came after. So in the meantime, we had the puppet dictator, Ariel Henry. We had the US imposing Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, imposed on the Haitian people, Martelly and Jovenel Moïse and Ariel Henry, who came later on, and people continued to mobilize against it. You hear a lot about those gangs in Haiti. Those gangs are not, I hate the term gangs because it doesn't describe them. It's used to confuse, to create confusion in the minds of people overseas and also Haitians. But people who live the situation know better, so they don't accept that term. They understand that these are paramilitary forces at the service of the Haitian government, the puppet government, and the occupation forces to have a reign of terror against the population. So what has happened is in March, of seeing the resistance of the people, the US and France and the others, they had to accept the idea of the Salut Public, the transition government, but at the same time, making sure that they would do everything to derail it. So now, as of about a month ago, we have a new transition government, but unfortunately, with the meddling and the imposition of the US and the United Nations, there are in it a number of elements from the right-wing parties that are the minions or the puppets of the US. And so this is where we are. So the so-called gangs, and I use that term because that's what's in the press, but those paramilitary death squads are working with the brutal Haitian police, because a lot of them, and contrary to what has been put out there, These are not revolutionaries. I want to stop that nonsense right away. There has been a campaign by some people from the left, so-called left, quote unquote, saying that these people, Jimmy Cherizier, Barbecue, that these are revolutionaries. They are not. Not everybody with a beret and a atomic gun and a submachine gun in hand is a revolutionary. You have to be for the people. You cannot be a revolutionary and committing mass gang rapes against our sisters, burning down the people's small shopkeepers' buildings and homes, people who have nothing to do with your nonsense of being systematically killed, raped, burned alive, and calling yourself revolutionary. It is a tactic that's being used by the imperialists in order to confuse and prevent people from being in solidarity with the true movement of the people in Haiti. Finally, I want to say that we thank the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. We thank many of our comrades who are in the audience and from other lands, from other sister countries, brother countries in the African continent. We thank you for your solidarity. We have to put pressure on Kenya. Don't be fooled by this nonsense about Kenya is coming to the rescue of Haiti. The people of Haiti are carrying out their own resistance, and where they organize, in many places, they have been very successful in stopping these paramilitaries from continuing to destroy their communities. Bringing the Kenyan troops, it's another attempt, just like they did with Brazil, to put a black face or to put faces of people of color in charge of their imperialist ventures, so that people will say, well, it's okay because these are troops from Kenya. No, the Haitian people reject that. It's not okay. These are being, just like the colonial armies of old, they are being used as the faces for the imperialist aggression. It's a US move, it's a French move to destroy our sisters and brothers, to destroy the Haitian Revolution, and to stop our movement for national liberation. I'll stop right there. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you, Comrade Pierre. That was excellent. And as you know, Haiti holds a special place in the heart of Africans across the world, particularly those of us who went through the transatlantic slave trade, and we are led, by the example of Haiti when it achieved independence as the first Black republic in 1604. So, those descriptions that have been given of the factors at play on the continent and off the continent, but in the lands that of African people, in each of the areas that were mentioned, we can see the overlap of factors and how the imperialist, the colonizer, whether it be settler colonialism or neo-colonialism, and how they work. Clearly, they work firstly at the economic level to starve our people of our own resources and the ability to develop systems and services for our people. They starve us of the ability to provide work for our people and to offer our young people a future. So as Comrade Miriam said, young Senegalese, under dictatorship would choose, to jump into a boat and risk their life to reach the shores of Europe. We've seen in Sudan, this false division being drawn between the Sudanese people of who is an African and who is, and who is Arab, and also trying to draw divisions along religious lines. I think we are clear, and certainly the All-African People's Revolutionary Party is clear, that we African people, we are one people. The divisions that we face are externally driven. We therefore need a worldwide structure to bring our people together and to direct our struggles. So before we go to question and answer, I'd just like to ask each of the speakers just to touch on what you see as the importance of Pan-Africanism in terms of progressing the struggle in your geopolitical area. So what is the relevance and importance of Pan-Africanism to the struggle in Sudan, to the struggle in Senegal, to the struggle of African people in England, and to the struggle of our people in Haiti? So over to you, Comrade Shadia. The link between the struggle for the people's determination in Sudan and the struggle to unify our continent under an all-African socialist government.
Thank you, my comrade. Actually, the last 5 years, I'm working to build kind of strong internationalist against imperialism.
Mm-hmm.
It was there in the 80s until the Soviet Union was fall down.
Mm-hmm.
And the socialist country are scattered. So the nationalist movement is scattered. And again, it was problematic because like it was kind of government internationalist related to the socialist countries and related to the Soviet Union. I think first of all, after this different experiences and the domination of the USR and the NATO and all this, we should think about like different form of democracy, different like a goal, different form of political regime, different political paradigm, different liberation movement, different internationalists. Because like if we say the people's power, as my comrade from IT said, if we think about to work for people, we can just add to it what we work for it like a concept in the communist political party in Sudan. Say from the people towards people, we learn them and learn from them. So we need to build people's power. And we should to have it clear when we are in Africa, we are in the global south, we are not primitive. We are exist before them. We have our legacy. We have our heritage. We have our way and heritage of peace and fighting and building our community and solving our problem. We have our heritage, and it is what is invented by our grandmom and dads, and which is working for us. So I think if we speak,
So
my grandson. And if we think about that, we need to think about also the people's democracy, not the neoliberalism democracy, not the paradigm which is imported to us from the colonialist country, not the control democracy which they impose it to us, because they bring for us a very, very ugly and damaged copy of their democracy. For myself, now I'm living in Germany. I don't like a democracy like that. I
Mm.
don't like it. I don't want it. And I'm not going to apply it in Sudan. So we should, when we talk about working with the people, we should also combine that working the people power. When we speak about people's power, we speak about the people's democracy. When speaking about democracy, we need to build the resistance movement between people. They should bring their leaders, not ready-made leaders. They should bring their politician, not ready-made by the West politician. And then when we talk about internationalism, we should talk about people's movement, resistance movement, internationalists. At that time, when the internationalists, when I feel what happening in Colombia, when I feel what happening in a very small village in Latin America, when I feel what happening in a remote village in Asia, then at that time we can speak about internationalism, and we can speak about a movement liberation for the global south. And luckily, the bulk of the global south is Africa, really. And we should work with each other. We should connect our struggle together. We should connect the people to each other, not only we, the politicians, but also the people. The women movement, we should connect them to each other. We should lead the political education among our people. Like we have new theory. We have something different from which the workshops, the neoliberal civil society and the neoliberal workshops and conference and this scrap. So that we need to educate our people what we mean, which kind of political education we need, which kind of liberation movement which can lead really to liberation. We have the experiences of political of the military corps, the military movement. We have the experience of all this, and we end up with the fact that we should build the power of the people, so that we have to work on this theory. We have to educate our people. We have to connect our struggle. We have to solve the language barrier. For example, if my English is stronger than that, I could elaborate more about what's happening in Sudan and in Africa's global south. So when my mother tongue, I force to have mother tongue Arabic, I can express myself in Arabic, and who can listen to me in Africa in Arabic. So we need to solve this problem, either to find to improve the education so that we can speak more 2 or 3 languages can communicate us good, or we have to return back to our native language. But we should do this is a revolutionary goal. This is a very important step, because language is a power. Language is a power. So we should speak the same language, the same revolutionary language, whatever, English, French, I don't know, but we should connect to each other, because language is a power. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Shadia. Comrade Miriam, the connection between Senegal, Africans in Britain, and the wider Pan-African movement.
We are historical English. You see, language is very important.
There you are.
I have the French in my head. I have the Wolof in my head. Quite few. Very important, as our comrade said. So yeah, we are historically connected because we have all been on the receiving end of imperialism and oppression, and have organized to overthrow this. We can see common threads in the oppression that we face, the weaponry of Western imperialism, the economic policies that ravage our economy, the articulation of anti-imperialism. For the Black nations that you just mentioned, Sister Maxine, there is a specific brutality in the racist ideology historically enabled the oppression of billions of people. The phrase Black Lives Matter means something invaluable because imperialism thinks the opposite. That Black lives are cheap, disposable, and expandable in the name of capitalist exploitation for profit, right? You only need to look at the outstanding example of solidarity to see connection. We see on the 5th anniversary of his murder, George Floyd's family reaffirming the deep connection between the Palestinian struggle and the African-American struggle against the violence of the state. South Africa bringing charges against Israel and state complicit in the genocide of the ICJ. Cuba sending brigades to aid South Africa that preempted the fall of apartheid. Venezuela saying for ICE operation across paying for ICE operation across Caribbean and standing against the US military invasion in Haiti. And the Senegalese, the Senegalese having free education available and bursary available for our Haitians brothers and sisters. All those kind of things. China consistent support of the inalienable right of return and right to resist of Palestinian at the UN. All those examples shows that our struggle is interlinked at the end of the day, whether we agree or disagree in certain ways, we all have to mobilize and organize to fight imperialism. That is the core of our issue. Once imperialism has been fallen, once imperialism fall, we can address racism, we can address so much more. And I think if we have tu vois, j'arrive pas à dire. Internalist politic, it can actually answer to those issues of how we mobilize, answer the issue of how we organize, answer how can we defeat imperialism once for all, and how actually Pan-Africanism is the answer to an advancement for Africa, but not only for Africa, but for the global South as a whole. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Miriam, for your reflections there and all those examples of how the struggles are interconnected and how we've actually supported each other. As you said, Cuba's support for South Africa, the Venezuela's support across the Caribbean, the support that's being given by China. There's so many examples of where we do work together. And I think, as Shadia said, we need to reconceptualize what our international unity is going to look like and how we're going to build people's power. So Pan-Africanism, true revolutionary Pan-Africanism, which must be anti-imperialist and therefore must be anti-capitalist and therefore must be anti-colonialist and therefore must be anti-settler colonialist, is the aspiration and objective of African people today in terms of gaining our freedom and self-determination. So just before we go on to question and answer, Comrade Pierre, I will ask you very kindly if you could contribute on this question of the struggle in Haiti and Pan-Africanism, and then we'll open up for contributions from participants.
Yes, thank you so much. Before the term Pan-Africanism was coined, our foremothers and forefathers were practicing it. The Haitian Revolution is a Pan-African revolution because it was African people who had been kidnapped from different parts of Africa, brought by the Spanish and the French into the land, who came together at a big congress called at Bois Caïman in the north of Haiti and they said all for one, one for all. And they said liberty or death. And they were led by a sister named Cecile Fatima and a man named Bookman Doughty. And Bookman had originally been a slave in Jamaica. And so they brought him there as a way to think. They were thinking, the imperialists were thinking that they were separating him from his people. But once he touched the land of Saint-Domingue, the colony, he became one. He was an African man. So he was welcomed and embraced by his people there in the land, and he led the freedom struggle. So when Haiti became independent, Simon Bolivar from South America came to Haiti seeking help, and Haiti, many Haitian volunteers who had fought the Spanish went with him to fight with the one condition. It was the total abolition of slavery. That was the one condition. Toussaint Louverture, in the book by C.L.R. James, The Black Jacobins, C.L.R. James mentioned that Toussaint, who himself was from the Alada nation, his grandfather was a king in the Alada nation in Africa. He conceived of the idea of finding a way to take his army to Africa and to fight the slave trade right there on the African continent and unite with his sisters and brothers. So the whole idea of Pan-Africanism, it's seared in our DNA. It is our DNA as a nation, and it's been passed on from one generation to the next. And I mentioned Dessalines' declaration. One thing that people don't know is that Dessalines used to pay the slave ships when they used to come transport our foremothers and forefathers. Whenever he could find the opportunity to pay for the slave ship to come and pay for the freedom of the Africans who were on those slave ships before they reached those, I had to, let me put that in quote, those slave markets. And so the Dominican Republic today that is carrying out where the elite that's in power is carrying out racist, is pushing racism and racially motivated acts against Haitians. Their freedom, the freedom of the Dominican Republic, of people, of Black people and Dominicans in general, their foundation, their founding, it was thanks to the Haitian people who in 1861, I believe, President Geoffroy had sent Haitian troops to help the Dominicans get rid of the Spanish colonialism. And even with Greece, when Greece was fighting for independence in 1821, they asked Haiti for help. Haiti couldn't send its weapons, but they sent them coffee, which was like gold back in those days, a shipload of coffee. And Haiti said, you sell that coffee, buy yourself some guns. So what I'm saying is and I'm echoing what the sisters before from Senegal and from the Sudan had said, it's people-to-people connections based on the ideas of egalitarianism, based on the idea of smashing imperialism, based on the ideas that people have dignity and one has to help the other. So as we are going down the road towards liberation, if I stumble, pick me up, in the words of President Aristide, and help me along. If you stumble, I will pick you up and help you along. Okay, that's it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And as you said, Pan-Africanism is in the DNA of our sisters and brothers in Haiti. So thank you for that. So I'd now like to open up for any contributions from participants. If you have any questions to any of the speakers. I don't know if you can unmute and just ask it, or if you want to put a question in the chat. Any contributions?
Hello. Could I possibly ask something?
Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
I'm Kat, and I'm Chinese and from the TPLA. And I wanted to ask whether you ever wanted to create some sort of solidarity organization, or whether you have any recommendations for Asians who also want to be like part of promoting African liberation, but aren't really sure how.
So I think, I don't know, Comrade Miriam, aren't you part of a solidarity organization that Asian people can?
Yeah, it's funny because Kat is a member of TBLA.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, like we have always stood, like we have had many Asian that have to come out in different, whether it's a webinar, whether it's a protest or action being taken place against French embassy in support of the Sahel or Senegal or of a Pan-Africanist group. And vice versa, where you have African Caribbean that stood alongside, alongside Asian people, xenophobia and Islam, and during the COVID pandemic. It's extremely important for us to stood with each other, with the Cold War about to happen in China, happening right now in China, and also what is happening in the global, what has been happening in general during in Africa at the moment and in the Caribbean, as there are uprising happening from left, right, center at the moment.
So Kat, thanks, Miriam. Kat, I definitely say we will contact BLA and look at how we can work more closely together. Comrade Zizwe.
Revolutionary greetings, comrades. And I'm so happy to be a participant in such a beautiful African Liberation Day program. The panelists are excellent. And I just wanted to add some information to that question was just raised. There's a group called the Tricontinental Conference. Vijay Prasad is one of the members of this organization. And of course, he's from India. So our sister comrade from China and other people of other nationalities can join the Tricontinental Conference, which actually started in 1966 in Cuba and still exists to this day. And we also had the Organization of Solidarity, Peoples of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And it also still exists and was started in 1966. So those are a couple of other organizations that she can join. Thank you very much. Ready for revolution.
Ready for revolution. Thank you, comrade. There was someone else, I believe, who raised their hand.
Yes, thank you, Comrade Maxine. I'm Kuleko from Occupied Tanzania here. Very, very beautiful session we're having here. And thank you for the panelists, the contribution in reminding us of where Africa is today. I'm not going to be asking a question. It's just I want to caution against what I'm beginning to perceive as a misdiagnosis of what is happening in occupied Tanzania. Yes, it's true. It's the ANC government can be commended for presenting in the International Court of Justice against the atrocities in Palestine and in support of the Palestinian struggle. That is commended, and we are very proud of that. But if we talk about the confusion that has been created about liberated zones in Africa, there is one confusion that has been created in occupied Tanzania. Tanzania is not free. The African National Congress has been used as a diversion from the true Pan-Africanist cause. In occupied Tanzania, much as they are leading the campaign against the Zionist oppression in Palestine, in occupied Tanzania, the Zionists are controlling the banks. The Zionists are controlling the land. The Zionists are controlling everything, that even the government itself. The ANC is a proxy government. So that must be very clear. The tendency is to. I was actually surprised in one instance where in one ALD poster we had the face of Mandela. Mandela contributed in diverting the cause of our liberation here. The momentum that we got in 1960 after the wars that had been waged in the 1800s and 1600s, that momentum, which was created by the leadership of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, led by Robert Sobukwe, that has been diverted. It has been watered down. So occupied Azania is still not free. Israel, Africa.
Israel to A-Africa. Thank you, comrade. Yeah, there's and I guess, you know, our revolutionary ancestor, Amilcar Cabral, was very instructive here, you know, in terms of, you know, how we analyze the course of events that are unfolding. So on the one hand, you know, we can look at the ANC government, you know, go into the ICJ in terms of Palestine. But yes, I agree, it should not camouflage, you know, or hide the fact, you know, that the ANC government has failed for several decades, you know, to progress the struggle of African people in Azania, you know, for total liberation. And as you say, the economy remains controlled by the white settlers, who in theory are no longer settlers. And the hand of Zionism is as long as you can imagine, meddling in the economy of Azania and extracting our mineral wealth. So yeah, that's very, very much welcomed your contribution and acknowledged. Anyone else on the Sudan? It's not often that we get, you know, to talk about three zones of such importance to our struggle for greater unity: Sudan, Haiti, and Senegal. Any other contributions? I can't see anyone, so...
Yes, may I please?
Yes, please.
Yes, it's about Sudan. Thank you very much, sister, for your contribution. I just have a question. My name is Sister Ndete. I am from the A-APRP party, the Pan-African Revolutionary Party of Sister Maxine here. And so I'm so happy to celebrate African Liberation Day with you all, comrades. And this is a beautiful day, and it reminds us to keep fighting for our unity and our liberation. And I'm sending all my love to Sudan, to Haiti, to Senegal, and all Africa, and all abroad Africa, all where all the African children are, whatever, in the Caribbean and above. So I wanted to know, lately I saw a video on YouTube with President, I mean, it's not even a president, I call him criminal Kagame from Rwanda, inviting you know, Emeti, the RSF head of army, who is killing the Masalit people in Darfur. And I was so shocked to see Kagame, the criminal of Rwanda, greeting and welcoming him in Rwanda. So I've been asking my Sudanese friends to explain to me, and they told me that there are about 12 countries worldwide who are crushing Sudan, you know, including France, Israel, Arab Saudi, Arab Emirates, United Arab Emirates, I guess.
Yeah.
And yes, few more countries. So I would like to ask the sister from Sudan to let us know more of the countries who are contributing to the war in Sudan. how A-APRP and the chief of the Sudanese army are getting support from the Western powers to crush Sudan, and what we can do? Is there anything that we can do to support to fight back those 12 countries who are united to kill the Sudanese people and to crush the country in pieces? Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that, Sister Ndete, for that contribution. Comrade Shadia, would you like to respond?
Thank you. Yeah, I should mention that the conflict in Sudan is merely, it is not internal. It is about the geopolitical position of Sudan in Africa and near to the Arab or the Mediterranean countries. So, like from the beginning, the conflict in Sudan, it is between two projects. The political project, which is imposed by the imperialism, and the national political projects, which led by the liberation movement in Sudan. So, like the interference in Sudan started from the year 1940, let us say 50, before the independence, the political independence. From that time, the regional factors, regional countries who is interfering on behalf of the imperialists are known. Like Saudi Arabia is like the main factor who is existing all the time. Egypt is the main factor who our country was existing all the time. Libya, Gaddafi is away. Now they brought Emirat in its place. So they have their countries who are ready to control the political situation, political sense in Sudan from that time. Like only like different to what extent this regime is very close to USR or the imperialist countries. So this is like continuing all these years. Lately, Saudi Arabia and Emirat, they have one coalition against the horses in Yemen. And they use Hemeti and his forces to fight Yemen, to fight on behalf of them in Yemen. They pay them money. And by the end of the day, Hemeti was a merchant. He takes the money, he sells the gold to them, he buys the guns, and he kills the people in Yemen. So, like, he is a criminal. But what will maybe surprise you, who make Hemeti that strong and powerful and equipped well? The European Union, because they use this kind of militias in Africa to stop what they call the illegal immigration. And I told them many times, there is no legal or illegal immigration. There is a fact that you steal our resources, you build your welfare of our misery, and now we share our resources. So if you don't want us to come, stop the corruption, what you do in Africa, what you do in the global south. Because immigration, the new waves and big waves of immigration, because of the miserable in the global south, mainly in Africa. So if you don't want us to come, stop what you are doing. So they make Hemeti bigger and bigger. They occupied him with guns, with technology, with communication means, with everything. And still up to date, UK has very strong talk and relations with Himeti. And they are trying, according now Saudi Arabia and Emirat have different interests regarding Sudan and regarding Himeti. Usually Saudi Arabia, like historically, they want to deal with the legal army, with a controlled democracy, like the example of which the imperialists made in Egypt and Syria and these countries. But Emirat want to control the coast, the coast of Africa, the lands from Port Sudan up to the Indian Ocean. So they need this kind of militias. And this is an international interest and a regional interest. Emirat built their economy on trade, ports, and the diamond and gold. Saudi Arabia built their economy in tourism and oil. So like all of them, they have interest in Africa. So we can count now all of the EU countries are working against Sudan, smashing the revolution in Sudan. And what they are doing, especially here in Germany, they said that there is a new left in Sudan despite of the Communist Party. And they bring home one very new liberal party and another religious party. How could be a religious party, a leftist party, despite of Sudan, Communist Party, which is now over 70 years of very strong organization. All the world is fighting the Communist Party and exist and will be exist. So the situation now, the EU and also Wagner is Russia is fighting there regarding gold, and now Ukraine also fighting in Sudan. So the Sudanese situation is very complicated and very terrible. But what I can say that if we unite, because the Sudanese movement is very strong, but it cannot face the imperialism alone. This is impossible. We know that it's impossible. Now we need to fight the imperialist feminist, which is very crazy movement, which will destroy the women movement in Africa. Okay, they try to corrupt the women movement in Africa. They in the global south, they try to corrupt the youth movement in Africa by these silly conferences and this new imperialist concept. Now they call the liberation movement terrorists. They speak about Palestinian people as a terrorist. They can just name the Sudanese Communist Party. If they lost every chance of smash the Communist Party in Sudan, they can call it a terrorist organizations. They are doing that. They have this like ready-made boxes and put us on it. Now I can tell you something, and you can Google every bit of my information and you can find it. The Sudanese Communist Party and Sudanese revolution, people revolution in Sudan is facing the imperialist countries alone. Now the genocide which is happening in Sudan now, it is the same is what happening in Palestine. It is the same ugly genocide against civilian people. But they are not speaking about what's happening in Sudan, because which is happening in Palestine is threatening their existence, threatening the Zionists, threatening Israel. But what happening in Sudan is not threatening anybody, only the Sudanese people and the African countries, and they can die in peace until they can find a chance to come and see what is the problem. And while that, they are selling guns, weapons, everything to keep this fight continuing. And I tell you, regarding the meeting between the Rwandan president and Himeti, it is regarding the legal immigration project, which the EU is working on it now. They're trying to take the people, the immigrant, to Rwanda, and they are trying to. Rwanda is not enough for all these people, so that they try to find a solution with Himeti, maybe to take them to a part of Sudan, but for definite, not Darfur, because they need Darfur. They need the diamond and water and the gold there, because Darfur is like lying on a lake of internal water. So like the situation is like that. Sudan is paying. Now it's the war. Now the situation in the world is dividing countries according to their interest. New colonialism. And they are ugly. Now they didn't feel bad. Like they say the lies and they force us to believe it. Although they know that it is now like clear, nobody can believe them. Thank you. I hope I explain it.
Thank you very much, Comrade Shadia. So just to close this panel, our theme today, same struggle, smash settler colonialism in occupied Palestine, Africa, the Americas, and Oceania. I hope that this first panel and our great inspirational revolutionary activists and speakers, I've demonstrated the connections between neocolonialism and settler colonialism, and also, that Africa is not really free from settler colonialism, because neocolonialism is just a development on settler colonialism. When you can't wipe out the indigenous people, your methods are just to keep them as impoverished and confused and divided as possible. So we are talking about, one struggle, many faces, but the same roots. So I'd like to thank the speakers, Comrade Pierre from the 80 Action Campaign, Sister Shadia from the, sorry?
No, I said Haiti Action Committee.
Sorry. Sister Shadia from the Sudanese Communist Party, and Sister Miriam from PASTEF and Black Liberation Alliance based in the UK. Thank you very, very much. Now, we do have another speaker, Comrade Paul Matsimela. If you're there, but maybe with a different name, could you let us know? Not. So, whilst we wait, the next part of the agenda is the tribute to our great revolutionary ancestor, Amilcar Cabral. So I'll hand over to my sister and Comrade Veronique.
Please unmute.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, peace, Africans. welcome to our African Liberation Day in the UK. So I'm just going to talk really quickly about Amilcar Cabral, because we're dedicating as a party this African Liberation Day to Amilcar Cabral. Okay, so let me know when you can see my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So who was Amilcar Cabral? So Amilcar Cabral was born in 1924 in Portuguese Guinea, and died in Conakry in 1973. He was an agricultural engineer, a Pan-African political organizer, of revolutionary terrorist. And he was the founder, very importantly, he was the founder and the leader of the DPAIGC, which is the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde. Right. So what is Amilcar Cabral's contribution to African liberation? So Guinea was since the 15th century. Spain had been liberated, I believe, in 1968, France in 1958. But obviously, they were all subjugated to these colonial powers. And there was, social, economic, cultural, political alienation of the people. And looting of resources and destruction. We're just mentioning a few things. It's obviously colonialism obviously affected the people all throughout Africa tremendously on different layers. So Amilcar Cabral founded the PAIGC in 1958. So this party was for the liberation of Africa from colonialism and for the unification of African countries, to discuss strategies for liberation and unity. And it led the struggle for independence from Portuguese rule from Guinea and Cape Verde in up to 1964. He died in 74, and he died in 73. He was unfortunately murdered. So Kwame, something that is a thing that kind of comes back a lot with Amilcar Cabral is insistence on the fact that education and culture are important, and the reappropriation of our culture is important in our fight for liberation. Right. So just to talk very quickly about the PAIGC. So the strategies were, guerrilla warfare, and the blue. Forgetting our forces, especially in rural areas. They delivered propaganda. They used it to, mobilize people. They used radio leaflets. Not only did they mobilize the people, this was healthcare. Solid relationships with over African socialist countries and with which the relationship has been long-lasting, and this party is still active to this day. Right. So I'm going to leave you with a few quotes. We're already running out of time. So education is the most powerful tool to change society, but only if it is genuinely liberating and not just as a mean of reproducing the dominant ideology. We must educate people to think critically, to question power, and to challenge the status quo, rather than simply to conform to the norms of the dominant culture. And the very popular quote, always remember that the people are not fighting for ideas, nor for what is in men's minds. The people fight and accept the sacrifices demanded by the struggle in order to gain material advantages, to live better and in peace, to benefit from progress and for the better future of their children. National liberation, the struggle against colonialism, the construction of peace, progress, and independence are hollow words devoid of any significance unless they can be translated into a real improvement of living condition. Right, so I'm going to leave you here. Back to Maxine for the rest of this day. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Or am I on mute?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. You can hear me.
Oh, I can hear you.
Yeah, so
yeah, absolutely.
Sister Veronique, I'm just trying to find a document here. So unfortunately, our final speaker is not here with us today. So we're going to look to wrap up. I'm going to ask one of the A-APRP people on the call whether you could do the Kwame Ture Award and the Marina Kuyati Award, because we're trying to manage the Zoom and find the document. That's a bit difficult. So if anyone can actually do that, that would, you know, that'd be really helpful for me. So we were going to close with a presentation on the theme of same struggle, smash settler colonialism in occupied Palestine, Africa, the Americas, and Oceania. But I believe our speakers so far have really, you know, shed a light on why it's important that as African revolutionaries, we stand up and our voices heard, calling out Zionism and calling out settler colonialism. It's also important as Africans that we move beyond a biological definition where we're putting ourselves in perpetual opposition to Arabs or any other people, and we take a political stance. And when we take a political stance, we acknowledge and recognize that what we see in Palestine is part of the worldwide imperialist domination of the world, and that if we join together, as many of the speakers have said today, we will be strengthened to overcome imperialism and to overcome capitalism. But we know as African revolutionaries that it's not enough just to be against something. We also need to know what we stand for. So for the All African People's Revolutionary Party, it's extremely important that when we organize politically, we organize around a clear and explicit ideology, set of ideas that should be drawn from the history, the culture, and experience of our peoples. So the ideology of the All African People's Revolutionary Party is called Nkrumahism, Touréism, Cabralism, and it really reflects the contribution of three leading Pan-Africanists, Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré of Guinea-Conakry, and of course, Amilcar Cabral. So we are continuing a long tradition of Pan-African resistance, which from its inception has been anti-imperialist and anti-capitalist, and is also anti-patriarchal. Because when we examine our own culture and our own history, we see that Africa provides the greatest examples of the unity between male and female and the unity between genders. So we don't need to adopt any other culture's idea of what equality is. As African revolutionaries, we do not accept bourgeois concepts of equality. We are fighting for the freedom of the people, for the upliftment of the people, for the return of dignity to the people. So our task is to create the vehicles by which the people can become empowered and begin to lead our societies as we once did. So the question of Zionism remains a central question within the African liberation struggle, because Zionist ideology is both imperialist, white supremacist, and capitalist. And therefore it works hand in hand with the continued oppression of Africa and African people. Our immediate goal is the unification of Africa. A blueprint was given to us as long ago as 1968, but we remain some way away from achieving that goal. But the vision is clear. Africa must be totally liberated and united under a single all-African socialist government. It is not possible, just given the analysis we've received today of Sudan, of Haiti, of Senegal. It is not possible to liberate the African masses under a capitalist system. As Pan-Africanists, we must be resolutely anti-capitalist. Within the African bourgeoisie, and that differs from country to country and zone to zone, there is the false belief that through capitalism, we can accelerate Africa's growth. This belief is contrary to all that we have experienced and all that we know since the white man set foot on African soil. Capitalism, however benign it is presented, will never serve the interests of the African masses. We are called upon to draw the solutions from our own culture. And we know that history is the weapon of the masses. And when we study history, we know that within our own cultures, we have developed egalitarian, collectivist, and humanist social and economic and productive systems. And I'm not saying that these systems were perfect, but in their conception and in their goals, they attempted to balance the needs of all human beings with the needs of nature. So we have our own blueprint to draw on. We have our own ideologies to draw on. We have the ideology of Nkrumahism, Touréism, and Cabralism to guide our struggle towards Pan-Africanism. Some of our people would prefer to see Pan-Africanism as a way of life or as a nebulous vision. I think it is clear from the contributions made by the speakers that we need to be both historical and dialectical in our understanding and also in how we identify the way forward. So Pan-Africanism is a concrete reality that can be achieved. Currently, Africa remains divided, 51, 52 countries and several islands. Currently, the African diaspora is only connected to Africa by a very weak and breakable thread. True revolutionary Pan-Africanism calls for us to unite at a number of levels. Our contributors have already spoken about the need for common language so that we can communicate across our great continent and across our diaspora. Very important. We also need a common currency. We've talked already about the need for a single government where we set aside, you know, the state hierarchy and subject ourselves as a continent to working for the good of the continent. So the blueprint for what Pan-Africanism will look like when achieved is there. This is a concrete goal that we are tasked with in this generation to make a measurable contribution towards moving forward. So on behalf of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, I'd like to say, long live the struggles of the Palestinian people. May you be rewarded for your losses. Your strength and your resilience has lit a fire under the wider struggles against imperialism and against capitalism. And we stand side by side with you in this prolonged battle to overthrow the monster that is imperialism. But I think we can all say that this control of the world by the USA and by Europe is surely being tested in this part of the 21st century. So we should be emboldened and continue to build our organizations. So in closing, I'd like to say, long live the people of Palestine, our sisters and brothers, our cousins in struggle. Long live our people in Sudan, who are Africans firstly and always. Long live our people in Haiti, who lit the way for those who had been enslaved. And long live that precious democratic movement forward in Senegal. And as our speakers have said, let us move to unite our anti-imperialist forces, to unite our anti-imperialist forces, to unite the struggles within our homeland with the wider Pan-African movement and Pan-African organizations. So in final closing, thank you all for attending. Forward ever, backward never. Long live the memory of African and world revolutionaries. Thank you all.
It's really joy, Africa.
The Africa in
Africa.
thank you for giving me this chance to see you all. Really, I'm grateful. Thank you, Maxine.
It's been lovely meeting you, Comrade Shadia. We will stay in contact. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Viva African Liberation Day. Viva.
Forward.
Viva
Forward
Cabral.
ever,
Viva.
backward never.
All right.
Viva.
Thank you all. Give thanks.
Thank you, comrades.
Wonderful.
Thank you.